our side?
No. Don't know.
Okay, anyhow.
Bring
14th day of iftar photo talk. So the faces I know, but I think Anthony, your first time, right? That one, and that is a very nice decoration in our.
You still have it?
Play. Yeah, of course. That's so. I'm so happy to have Florian back, and he was the first mentor for us for the iftar photo talk. That was in 2021, and Vanya was there that time. Like that, I still remember that time. Like
you called me like 2 days before.
Yeah,
hey,
exactly.
Tomorrow I want to
the
do
same
this.
thing which I'm doing with Mira today.
Yeah, exactly. Good luck.
Yeah. So we were 7 on the other side, 7 on the other side with a 3-meter kind of distance, and that was great, right? 14 of us from 11 different countries. And of course, that's what the kind of connection that is iBrandConnect. So these are our distribution brands. Like today is been HNY filters. He also a lover of HNY filter. And Leo Photo, PGY Tech is our new brand. They make amazing camera accessories, and Shimoda is again a very nice tracking bag for high altitudes. Toolbox, an editing console. YCON, they make amazing sliders and lights. And video spinning is that 360-degree spinning. Along with that, in shop.ibrandconnect.com, we sell anything and everything of your content creators' needs. Please let us know the kind of equipment. My dear Flor, now the platform is yours.
Sure.
Enjoy. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Bye.
Right, so I want to talk about travel photos. Some of the lessons that I learned in the last 2 years and even before. And hopefully help you a little bit to create iconic travel photos. I don't think that necessarily the photos that I'm going to show you are iconic, but at least some of the lessons I learned, they might help you and me to get a bit closer to creating iconic ones. I've been doing photography for almost 20 years. I started with an analog camera actually when I was pretty young. I don't have a fixed genre. I try and experiment with a lot of different things usually. And that's why also the photos that I'm going to show you are sort of, some landscape, some wildlife, some underwater, quite mixed. And the first point is, why do I talk about travel photos and why is that different than other photos? And the answer is really that there's a few aspects about travel photography that are not necessarily the same as if you are taking photos in your city where you're born or where you're living. And some of them are listed here, so you have different rules and regulations maybe. New scenes and subjects that you're not familiar with, that you haven't encountered before. You have to respect the local culture, and that's not just people, but also tourism and so on. How is the setup in a new place? You have to deal with tour operators sometimes, so you might need somebody to drive you or take you on a boat and so on. That makes it different. You have time constraints, because usually you're only there for a few days and you can't sort of come back next week, which is what you can do if you live in a place. And you also have unknown kind of weather patterns that might be different than in the place that you live in or that you're used to. So those are some of the factors why travel photography and some of the things that I learned also, I probably couldn't have learned the same way if I was just taking photos in Dubai, for example. So here are the photos that I'm going to talk about. And we'll start with this one here, the first one. And that photo is taken in a very random place. It doesn't even have a white dot on this map here. In the Republic of Palau, there is an island there called Ngerokewit, and that's what I wanted to document. But I did realize that Palau is quite cool, actually. It has a lot of interesting places. It looks like this, kind of. So a lot of people go for diving. There's a lot of nice island formations. There's a few relics from some big World War II battles over there. It's quite a cool place, actually, but it's very small. 50,000 people only, really, really small country. And not that much to do, other than kind of what you see here. But I came for this island. So this is one of to me, one of the most beautiful island formations that I've ever seen. And I kind of randomly encountered it, and I was in Taiwan before I came to Palau, and I happened to see that there's a flight to Palau from Taipei, and there's only sort of 3-4 international flights to Palau every week, not a lot. So I took my chance, basically, and I went there. And I had a goal to document this island formation. It's a national environmental sanctuary, so it's been that way for like 70 years or something. And it's not easy to get to, actually. You can't take your boat there, you can't get close to it, you can't land on a beach. So the only way to do it is to do it by plane. So I had this plan to get this kind of photo from a small Cessna. And that's what I did. So I took this photo, and it was kind of what I expected, like from looking at Google, and I talked to the pilot before, and I planned for having reasonably good weather, and it was raining a lot while I was there. I had about 5 days. I asked them what height to fly and how to get around, and I got this photo, and I was sort of okay with it, but it was not easy because you have, like, you can see in the left side, the wing of the Cessna in the way, and you have the wheel, and it wasn't that easy to get the shot that I wanted. So I'm kind of okay with what I got, but I wasn't super happy with it. Now, 2 or 3 days later, I had a boat tour planned to some of the other islands, and this is pretty far. It's very hard to reach by boat, actually. It takes like 1.5 hours from the harbor. And I told the captain that I was trying to get this shot, and he was like, well, if you're willing to give up seeing other things, we can try and get there. And it was like 7 in the morning, the weather was kind of not so great, but it was okay-ish, and I said, okay, let's try. We just skipped some other things, because I really came for this island formation. Let me try and get some more shots. And we tried with the drone. And I had a drone permit, but I didn't really expect that the drone would be able to shoot because it's relatively big, the area. You have to be quite far. And I didn't even think that I could get close enough by boat. So the guy said, let's try. And 2 hours later, we arrived, and it basically looked like this. It was like pouring rain, really, really bad. And we just went to a nearby island where we could land on the beach and just waited for like 2 hours until the rain finished. And I convinced the guy to just wait, essentially. Couldn't really do anything. And then we went out, and I flew the drone, and I got a much better shot, as it happens. I got this shot in the end. And to me, it was way more interesting than what I actually had planned. Yeah, way cooler, because you had different composition. You have the rain clouds in the back that soaked us just a couple minutes earlier. And it would have been pretty much impossible to get this composition and this angle from the plane. It's way too low, too close to the islands. The seaplane didn't fly that close. And it's also a composition that I hadn't seen before. So why is this interesting? Because it was a really hard shot to get. Weather was a big problem. I was flying the drone from a small boat. Really hard, actually. Flying was okay, landing was really difficult. It took me a long time. It took me a long time to even find the boat again until once I flew the drone pretty far away. And I know some people, when they fly from a boat, they catch the drone. Don't ever do that. I've seen too many people that had their hands really badly cut trying to catch a drone. Don't do that, especially from a moving boat. Yeah, so on here it would have taken 2 hours to the next hospital, or at least 2 hours. So don't do that. Yeah, it was pretty far. It was very windy, and I had to shoot a panorama. So it's a vertical panorama to get that kind of composition, and needed to do an HDR as well to capture the dynamic range that was in the shot. And I used a polarizer, which some people forget about kind of when they fly a drone, but makes a huge difference to use a polarizer on your drone when you fly over the sea and you take these kind of island shots. The lesson actually that I learned here, and I'm somebody who really plans my shots usually, is this one, is that it's okay to plan, but yeah, keep an open mind of what else can happen when you're there, when you try and take a photo of what you had planned to do. So in this case, it was talking to the boat captain, telling him the story, and he just said, okay, let's go. And I didn't even realize that we could have gotten this close to even fly the drone. It was not one of the options I had considered, and nobody had really done it. So if you research this, you will not find drone photos of that island. You will always see from the plane. So that's the first lesson that I learned. Planning is good, but keep an open mind to the other options that you have. The second one is this volcano photo, and that was taken in Iceland on the Reykjanes Peninsula, and I went there purely for this. I went in August of 2022, 3 days before I took this, I was in Alaska, completely the opposite, snow on the other side of the planet. And I heard that the volcano was erupting. And I had like a 4-day break between the end of my Alaska trip and then the next trip I had planned. And I basically decided to squeeze those 4 days with a trip to Iceland. So I spent 36 hours on the ground in Iceland only for the volcano. I didn't have a hotel, I just rented a car and I drove to the volcano. And no regrets, because after I left a couple of days later, it was over. So I took the chance and paid a lot of money for the ticket, but it was worth it in the end. Now, what you don't really see, or maybe you've seen on Instagram, is that actually, even though this hike to get to the volcano is not so easy, it's like 2 hours and going through ash and so on, it's, when you have a lot of equipment, it's actually somewhat tough, I guess. But a lot of people do it. It's pretty busy, actually. Yeah, there's a lot of people there. And even when you're at the volcano, there's like a lot of people around, so you can see people everywhere on the slope there next to the fissure. So I only had 36 hours, and this was like sunset time. I told myself, okay, like I could go back and sleep in the car maybe, and then come back in the morning and try again the next day, and I didn't want to do that. So basically I stayed overnight, and it was pretty horrible actually. It started raining really, really badly. I was like the only one there at one point, and it was not a comfortable night. It was luckily only 3 or 4 hours because it was in the summer, so there's not a long night in Iceland, but it was not actually that nice. But what happened is that the next morning I got this shot, which I was kind of happy with, because it was one of the very, very few sunrise shots that were taken at the volcano when this eruption happened. And the real interesting part is not so much the photo. Yes, okay, I'm happy with it. But I was also the only one there. That time, sunrise, there was nobody else on the entire slope. I was the only person at the volcano. And that made it so much more interesting, because you just didn't hear the chatter of the people around you anymore. Suddenly you heard the volcano and the noise of the lava and those kind of things that you never otherwise hear. So from a photography point of view, drone photo is an HDR because a lot of dynamic range. Unfortunately, with at least the drone that I was using at that time, you have a fixed aperture. You can't really close your aperture to get a nice sun star. I did try obviously with my camera on the top left to get that. But photography-wise is not that challenging necessarily, other than flying your drone and so on. But the real challenge was taking the call to stay there as the only person overnight, and then being there by yourself. But 100% worth it, and the lesson here is that sometimes it's worth to not follow the crowd. So they all went back when it got dark, and I didn't. And I was there by myself in the end, watching the sunrise behind the volcano, and was the best moment of the 36 hours that I had there, 100%. So that's the second lesson that I have to share on travel photography. Yeah, don't always follow the crowd. And the next one is this photo on the top left. This was taken in Kenya. So yeah, in the Amboseli National Park. And beautiful place, lots of interesting sights, obviously wildlife, and Nairobi. And then in the Amboseli Park, you have this beautiful view of the Kilimanjaro on the Tanzanian side. So nice landscapes. But I came only for this. I came for elephants. And that's because Amboseli has special elephants in a way that they're not really afraid of humans, and they're much calmer. They don't attack the cars. They are just more used to humans being around for some reason, and to humans being friendly. Whereas, for example, in Botswana, where there's a huge elephant population, there's much more competition, there's much more conflict between humans and wildlife. So they would be much more aggressive than in Amboseli in Kenya. And I was super happy to get these kind of shots. But I came even for an even more special animal. And that's this one. So his name is Craig. I don't know who named him, but it's the elephant with the largest tusks in Africa. And this is how I took this photo. Yeah, I was in front of the car when he was walking by, sitting in front of the car, waiting for him to walk by, and then trying to get the shot. But it was not really so easy as it looks here. So I spent 5 days here in Amboseli, and I had only one encounter with Craig, even though for the whole 5 days, our focus was only finding him. So the way we did in the end was, there's a network of spotters, a few Maasai, for example, around, and okay, you give them $50 or $100 and they tell you if they see him, and then you go. So one morning, 5 a.m., we had the call, we saw him 2 hours away, got in the car, raced for 2 hours, we drove past the Pride of Lions, we didn't stop for the lions, yeah, we just went to go and find Craig. And we found him in the end, and I was the only one there with him, and took nice photos. My favorite one is this one, I think. And it was very, very special to be so close and so open next to an elephant like that. Very, very big bull, over 50 years old. The tusks are 100 pounds each. Yeah, they call them super tuskers. There's only 20 or so left in the world. Most of them in Amboseli and Tsavo in Kenya, and then a few in the Kruger Park in South Africa, because they've been hunted basically, and it takes the whole life of an elephant for them to grow tusks this big. So from a photography point of view, again, not that challenging. The challenge was finding him and getting close enough safely, yeah, and knowing how to approach him and what you can do and where you can sit and watching him. And then finding a composition that was nice, obviously, because you can't really tell him to move a little bit, yeah. So you just have to try and get the best angle while he's moving past you. And then it was about getting the shot right. Interesting tool here was on my camera. I'm using an Olympus camera. I have the flip out screen. Super, super helpful from shooting from the ground. Yeah, otherwise it would have been much more difficult to get a good composition. But the real lesson I learned here is that it was super tough to pass those lions and everything else that was there in Amboseli. This is a national park. There's tons of interesting animals. And we just every day went past cheetah and lion and obviously tons of zebra and all kinds of animals, because the only focus was finding nice elephant compositions and specifically finding Craig. So sometimes you have to pass on nice opportunities if you want to get the one thing you came for. So that was my lesson here. Yeah, keeping your eyes on the prize. If you have something in mind, you can't be distracted. Because we found him on the second to last day, and it just took effort and time to do it. The next one is this photo on the bottom right. So I took this in Mongolia, on the western border almost of Mongolia with Kazakhstan, as it happens. Sorry, Kyrgyzstan. And Mongolia is incredible, beautiful place. Lots of interesting, super diverse landscapes. Pretty untouched in a way. Yeah, not as touristic as many of the other places. There are some corners like the Gobi Desert where you see tourists, but never hordes of people. It's always quite civilized, and really a lot of interesting landscapes and also people and culture. Really enjoyed it. And one of the things that people shoot in Mongolia, and that is a little bit more popular, or maybe the most popular subject, is these eagle hunters. So this is a tradition in the eastern part of Mongolia where people train eagles and use them to hunt foxes, for example, to get the fur and make clothes out of them. And this still happens, so they have festivals, and in the winter they practice this. It's not just a tourist thing. So obviously I had seen these shots before I went. And I went there on a group tour, which I normally don't do that often, but here it had the benefit that the group had organized 10 of these eagle hunters so that we could take nice photos. So it was working in this case. But I still wanted to try and get something else. So I actually took this idea from the elephant shot, the one you just saw earlier, which is to shoot from the ground. But here, when the horses run past you, you can't really shoot from the ground like this. So instead, I put my camera up, and I used the remote shutter to get shots from the ground. And ended up with a, to me, more imposing, more intimate kind of shot than the one you just saw earlier. This is the result. And of course, taken with a wireless remote. And I had to use a manual focus, preset the focus while I was setting up the camera. I had to try and guess the exposure a little bit. I couldn't really tell what's going to happen, where the horses are going to be, how big are they going to be in the frame. So I had to kind of expose for the background and then leave some room so that the horse in the frame wouldn't change the exposure too much. And the shot is kind of okay. Yeah, it does the trick in a way. I got what I wanted. But I only had really 2 tries for it. So the first one was a disaster. It didn't work at all because they didn't really know how close to run to the camera. And I had a second try. And at that time, we were kind of at the end shooting and the group wanted to leave and the other photographers weren't really up for this. They didn't really understand what I was trying to do, I guess. They didn't have a wireless remote for your camera. So I only had my second try. And it's okay, the photo, but if you look at it, the raw file, it's super, super dark. It's a little underexposed, yeah? The focus was okay, but it's underexposed because I was kind of concerned about the clouds in the back, yeah, because the clouds were super bright, the light wasn't the best. And yeah, I wasn't super happy. And you can see also my shutter was a little fast. It's 1/2500th of a second. So I could have gone shorter and still freeze the motion and freeze the water droplets, and drop my ISO also to get a little less noise when I have to brighten up the shot after. So if I had a few more tries, I could have gotten a better shot and maybe also a different composition and so on. This one is okay. The eagle was in a good position. The face is visible, all of that. So it was okay. It was not a bad try, but I could have gotten more and more interesting ones potentially. So the lesson for me here was a little bit to trust my instincts that I knew this was going to be a good shot, and I should have just spent more time getting this shot instead of getting the ones that everybody else was doing. So I should have just insisted a little bit to spend time getting cool shots like this because maybe they exist, but I have not seen them of the eagle hunters. I've seen lots of the ones like normal telephoto, kind of eye level. I've seen lots, but I've not seen this one. So even if it existed, it's much more rare. And I should have spent more time getting this. So if you think you have a cool shot that hasn't really been done, yeah, trust your instincts, insist on getting it right, and try it, and don't just do what everybody else did. So that's a lesson where I could have done a better job, for sure. That's the 4th one. That's number 4. The 5th one is this photo here on the bottom left. And we have to travel very far north again, almost to the end of the map. And that's in Skjervøy, in the north of Norway, the very, very north of Norway. Really beautiful area. I went in the winter. Lots of nice fjord kind of landscapes. Obviously, you can get northern lights up there. And Tromsø is quite a nice city as well. But I came for these guys in the middle. I came for the orca whales. I came for killer whales. So I didn't just come to take photos of killer whales out of the water. I actually came to do this. So this is one of the few places in the world where you can get in the water with orca, with killer whales. And I took this on my iPhone in the water myself. So this was in 2022 when I went. That was the first time I went there. And we had maybe 2 days where the weather was kind of like this. You had a little bit of sun. There's only 4 or 5 hours of daylight at that time of the year. And you don't really have a lot of nice weather like this also if you're not super lucky. So we had like 2 days where it was like that. And then you have to have an encounter with orca whales. It's not like they swim around you all day long. You look for them. They have to either be feeding or they have to be very calm. If they travel fast, no chance you can get in the water with them. They just swim you. No way to get close to them like I did. Most of the days actually looks a bit more like this. Yeah, so you have like shitty weather, they're traveling, they're too fast, you're sitting on this little boat in your dry suit like that, freezing your ass off, it's 0 degrees, the water is like 2-3 degrees. You cannot move your fingers anymore, you can hardly press the shutter, yeah, everything is wet. It's not so pleasant. Now, I loved it though, and I wanted to go back, so I did the same thing again in 2023. And this time I came with an underwater case. So I got the underwater case for my camera, AOI underwater case, which I always wanted to have because I wanted to try it and I like snorkeling and reef life and so on. So I got the underwater case for my camera and I came back. And obviously I tested the case and the dome and everything in the pool before I went there, and everything worked fine. I knew how to handle it. Kind of everything was okay. But when I went there, a couple of days before, I looked at my old footage again to kind of familiarize myself what kind of compositions would I look for, how to move in the water, where are they. It's not so easy. There's a lot of stuff happening. And then I realized that a lot of my videos and photos from the iPhone were out of focus because the camera was focusing on the bubbles that were in front of you all the time, yeah? There was a lot of bubbles all the time, and iPhone camera focused macro on the bubbles, and you got ways out of focus. So I had a super clever idea, I thought, to try and use the focus limiter on my camera. So I set the focus limiter to only focus from like 2 meters to infinity, or 1.5 to infinity, so that I don't have this problem of the camera focusing on bubbles that are really close to me. And I did it, and I tried it outside on the dry, in the case, and I focused, and okay, it doesn't work if my hand is in front of the lens, it only focuses too far, and I was like, okay, good, solved one problem that I will have. So that trip, we had one nice day, 7 days, only one nice day. The rest was really, really bad. No visibility, looked like this, basically. We had a few orca encounters, but very hard to see anything underwater, murky water, yeah. And we had one nice day where we had one good encounter. And here's the shot I got. Like garbage, basically. Completely out of focus. Did not happen. I just did not happen. And I had maybe 20 shots that I could take, 20 opportunities to get some kind of shot of an orca underwater, some really, really close to me. And just 90% garbage. Like, just couldn't focus. And then, as you saw, like, you're on this boat in like a dry suit and with the gloves, and you're freezing and so on. And I tried to figure out what's wrong. Did I accidentally set the lens on manual focus while I put it in the case? I tried to figure it out. I couldn't figure out what the problem was. We had one more encounter. Again, I didn't get proper shots. And that was the only day where we had good orca encounters in 7 days. So basically, all of my shots are like this, essentially. And there's a lot of challenges in this, yeah. It's dark, you have your equipment, it's very cold, the orcas are moving, and then obviously focus, yeah, underwater. But what I realized afterwards, so I was really pissed, I was really unhappy. During that trip, on the last day, I was really unhappy. And I couldn't figure out why. I was testing the camera again outside the water, and it worked perfectly fine. Only in the water, it didn't focus. And I still don't know the answer for sure. My suspicion is that it has something to do with phase versus contrast detection underwater. That doesn't work only when you have the limiter on. It only doesn't work when the focus limiter is on. I have no idea why. And in my case, I'll write to Olympus and I will ask them. But again, of course, afterwards, I went back to the pool and so on, and I tried. And turned the limiter off, everything works fine. If the limiter is on, it doesn't work. So the mistake I made here, and the lesson obviously to learn, is you need to know your equipment like inside out, all its quirks and so on, all its weird things, not just high level, yeah, these kind of things that normally you wouldn't really use. You don't really use a focus limiter that often. But here I wanted to, and it was the first time really I was trying it, and then underwater, not a combination I was facing before. You need to know your equipment in and out. And these are moments where you had one chance, yeah, gone. I did get some photos that are not completely horrible. I got 2 kind of nice ones. But I was just lucky, in a way, that the focus was somehow set to the distance roughly where the orca was. So, yeah, the lesson here is to know your equipment like inside out. You have to know your equipment inside out. And this is like a particular thing with my Olympus. No idea why it is. But the other day we had an interesting situation. Whoever's using Nikon, like the Z7 for example, and I think also the Z8 that they tried. I was out with Andy and Mikey. We're trying to do star trails. So they set up their Nikons, 30-second exposure, and basically set the timer to 31-second intervals and just let it shoot for like 3-4 hours. Came back after 4 hours, and I think it was C7 Mark II and the Z8, I think, I don't remember, but for sure one of those two, or maybe both. And they missed every second shot. And they did some research. It turns out, if you set your Nikon Z7 II to 30-second exposure, how long is the actual exposure it takes? Any clue? It's not 30 seconds, it's 32 seconds. Try. and see. So they screwed up their start trace because of that. There's YouTube videos, it's even mentioned in the manual in a very weird, obscure way, and Andy's asking them why this is and so on. That's what it is. It shows you 30 seconds, but it's 32. So it's not just this kind of case, there's quirks in every equipment, and the better you know, the more you can avoid this. Start trace wasn't so bad, they can go back another night. I can't go back there so easily, and it's not cheap also. Yeah. So yeah, knowing your equipment and its quirks is a difficult and expensive lesson that I learned here with the orcas. All right. Next one. Okay, this photo here. This is maybe an obvious one, but we talked about this earlier just now. So I took this photo near Cebu in the Philippines. And I went there because there's a cool island called Bohol. And Bohol is sort of famous for actually these really cool chocolate hills, it's called. It's a really, really cool landscape. I've never seen anything like it. I would go back again and shoot more. It's really quite special. So there's all this plain kind of island, then there's these little hills. And famous for the tarsiers also. You can see the Philippine tarsiers there in a few sanctuaries. Has a few nice places. But one of the photos that I enjoyed there that I took is something that I didn't really plan for. When you fly to Cebu, you essentially come kind of like this. And I was sitting on the right side of the plane and I saw this island from the plane. And it looked pretty cool. I found it on Google Maps after. It's basically built along this central pier with some mangroves behind it. And it's not really a tourist island. So I wrote to like 2-3 tourist companies if they know how to get there or where exactly it is or what's the best way to get there, and they didn't know it. So I went to the port and I basically asked the fishermen and some of these boat captains, like, can you take me there? And I found somebody who took me in the end. And I went there, and it was actually the island itself was cool. I got some interesting portraits, and they have a few clever ways of how they build their houses on this pier. Basically, the whole thing is built on water and stills. And I got this kind of drone photo that I'm quite happy with of that island. And this was not really a difficult photo to take. Again, I used a polarizer to avoid the reflections on the water. But there was nothing too special other than finding a boat to take me there and taking into account the weather. But the lesson I want to convey is that, yeah, you should always be scouting. Yeah, like every plane landing, every time you drive with your car somewhere, there's always opportunities. And this is the example I picked, but I have a lot of pictures in my portfolio now that I only found because I kept my eyes open all the time looking for places that weren't really on the tourist list or on the normal photos list. There's not many photos of that island. Yeah, I've not seen a lot of it. And it's quite a special place in the way it was built. So yeah, the lesson here is to always scout and always keep your eyes open. Okay, number 7, this one here. So this is from a trip to Ladakh in India. About 4,000 meters, 4,500 meters high in the Himalayan mountain ranges. So you typically go to a place called Leh, which is one of the 2 capitals they have in that district. They have 2 capitals for some political, historical reason. Cool place, nice landscapes. Reminds me more of Nepal maybe, rather than traditional sort of northern India. It's very different, also the people. But the main reason you go there is this guy in the middle is leopards, snow leopards. And typically when you go, you take the plane to Leh and you rest for like 2 days to acclimate to the heights so you don't get altitude sickness. And then you move on and you go even higher into a lodge somewhere where you wait and spot and drive around to see if you can find a snow leopard somewhere. And it's very different from safari in Africa. Yeah, it's much harder to see a snow leopard. You'll see in the example I'm going to give you now. And as it happens, we arrived in the morning, and in the afternoon we got a call that they found a snow leopard. And normally, as I said, you would be acclimating for 2 days, but when you get a call that they saw a snow leopard, you go. So if you spend about a week there, you might get 2 sightings, maybe 3 if you're super lucky, but there's also people that go there for a week and they see no snow leopard whatsoever. So if you get a call, you go. So we drove for like 1.5 hours, even higher, 4,000 meters somewhere, to this place. So this is a panoramic photo of that place, the viewpoint, and this is where they saw the snow leopard. But the snow leopard is actually here. This is 1,200 millimeters focal length. The snow leopard is this thing here. That's the snow leopard, this white spot. And that's how most of your sightings are going to be. Yeah, really, really far. Very rare. Now the other cool thing is on the left side we saw some urial. These are urial, these really tiny kind of mountain goat, gazelle type animals. And we were standing there, and for I think maybe 3 hours that snow leopard was sitting there, and once in a while it turned around like your house cat, right? They behave literally the same as a cat in your house. And we were standing there for 3 hours watching him. But it was kind of cool, sitting on this red stone. It looked kind of nice. I got some nice photos. And when you're there for 3 hours, okay, you try and optimize the shot as much as you can. Like, you take a lot of shots because the air is like flimmering, so you try and get one that is really sharp. Every time the cat changes a little bit, you try and get another one, so you take a lot of shots. At some point, the snow leopard was moving. So he saw the urial, and he went to the left side. So over like another hour, so it was like 3-4 hours in now, he moved to the left side, and you saw him going after these urial. So I got some cool shots actually of him like slowly trying to make his way to the urial. But it took another like 1.5, 2 hours. He was just sitting there looking, and he moved a little bit. He was looking, he moved a little bit. And every time, because you're so far away, okay, you use your converter, you try and lower your ISO as low as possible to get the best shots, because you have nothing else to do. You just try and get better and better shots. But then suddenly he went for it. So this video was taken by my guide, the guide next to me. And it went viral, this video, because it's super, super rare to get a snow leopard hunting and see him. It's like National Geographic kind of style. The guide that I had that was next to me, he's been doing this for 15 years. He said he's never once seen a hunt from start to finish like this. He's seen like partial, or the end, or the beginning, but never like this in 15 years. I saw it on my first day. So super, super lucky. Super, super lucky. But what did I do?
Can you do this again?
Yeah, okay. Sure. This is the left side of the panorama where that beige area was. That's where he went down the canyon. And the urial fell, and the snow leopard jumped after him, and he caught him down. He then dragged him back up there. So I got shots. Yeah, this is the kind of shot that I got. It's not so bad. But if you look a little closer, it's pretty shit actually. It's like super blurry. Yeah, not sharp. And this is because, look at my shutter speed. Yeah. So why? What did I do? This was like 6 hours after we saw him the first time. So you try and get the best shots you can while this thing is slowly moving and turning around and rolling in the sand and not doing anything for 6 hours. So of course, in the end, I used my converter, and I tried to lower my shutter a little bit so that I can keep my ISO somewhat low, because he was in the shade by now at that time, yeah. And with the converter, your aperture is at f8, so you lose a lot of light. And then, of course, the moment he starts chasing, you can't change it anymore, right? It's too fast. And essentially, my ISO was limited to 3200, so I could have gone more, or I could have removed my converter and instead just left a little bit less range, yeah, crop a little bit after. But I would really have to up my shutter to like 1200, 1600. And that's what made all the difference between like shots that are kind of okay-ish at a small resolution, or like a really nice snow leopard chase, which is like super rare, right? Super rare. So the lesson here is don't be greedy, yeah? Don't be greedy trying to get the best shots, like trying to get your ISO from 400 to 200 just to do a little more, when you have the chance to get something really cool instead. So it was a very, very difficult lesson. I was not happy for the rest of the week. We had a few more sightings, but I can go there for the next 10 years and I'll never see a hunt like this again. Yeah, no chance. It's like really, really, really rare. You have to stay for like, I don't know, 3 months and just chase a snow leopard for 3 months and just every day go after the same one to get this kind of scene. So that was a difficult lesson to learn, yeah. In hindsight, I would have just removed my converter and just set my shutter to the shutter and not care about anything else. Yeah, not care about focal length and ISO, just leave it. But make sure your shutter is right, obviously. Easy to say in hindsight. But this is why it's difficult. This is why the lesson is harsh, because you know what should be the right settings. You just had other priorities, or you got bored and you tried different things while you're there. Okay, now number 8. This one is taken in Africa again, Namibia. Really, really beautiful country. Wildlife, but primarily landscapes, like really incredible landscapes, a lot of diversity also. Really great for astrophotography. So we did lots and lots of astrophotography, Milky Way, star trails, even sort of semi-deep sky, let's say, with the large Magellanic Cloud over this abandoned train station. But the shot I want to talk about and the lesson I want to convey is actually this one. So not that special, but obviously huge green meteor inside. That's typically magnesium that's causing that kind of color. And how did I get the shot? Well, meteors are super unpredictable and they're only there for 1 or 2 seconds, right? So I was there in a place where it was dark enough and where it was possible, I would say, to do astrophotography maybe 5 nights out of 2 weeks or something like that. And I had 2 cameras, actually 3 cameras actually, but only 2 sort of usable lenses for this kind of composition. And we were out shooting a lot of the night, but not all night, yeah. But I had both cameras for all the 4 or 5 nights set up to shoot all night long while I was sleeping, all night long, only to capture meteors, basically. This was the only nice one I got. I have a few other ones from other trips, but this is the example I want to use. And the lesson here is very simple, like maximize your chances. Yeah, so there was a lot of people that didn't do that. I don't know why. Like, this was very safe. There was nobody there. You could have easily set up your camera, can use a battery pack to power it, and just leave it out for the rest of the night while you go to bed. And I have a few cool shots with meteors from different trips, including this one, just because I left out my camera and I left it shooting. So people don't do that, and then the next morning when you show them the meteor, they're like, oh shit. Yeah, so the lesson here is to maximize your chances whenever you can. This applies to meteors, but obviously there's other similar kind of compositions or similar scenes or similar events where you can apply the same lesson. Right, that was number 8. Now you realize there's only 8 here, not 9, because I called the session like 9 lessons. Then the last lesson is something that applies to all those things that we just saw. And that's essentially that I had lots of cool experiences where the photos are important, but they're not what it's all about. So on the top right, for example, that little hole I'm standing in is a dinosaur footprint. So not really something where you can take a lot of cool photos, but it was a really, really special experience. Or in the middle, hiking up a volcano in Indonesia, where you need a kind of gas mask to go there because otherwise you can't breathe. Or the one on the bottom in the middle is a festival in Taiwan where once a year people shoot each other with fireworks, like literally. A lot of fun, very hard to get good shots. I tried, I have some that are okay. But the experience was more important. So the lesson here is that it's not all about getting the iconic photos. Sometimes it's just about getting some photos or making the memory. So that's the last travel photography lesson that I wanted to share. Having said all that, I did get some photos that I liked and I put them all in this book. So that's a very nice way of trying to document and process your photos afterwards. I think I said this in previous workshops as well. If you never printed your shots, start doing it. If you have enough, start making a book. Like, it's really, really nice. Just a nice experience. Making the layout, trying to figure out which shots go well together. You go and research the text that you write for it, so you go back and look at the places that you've been to and what was special about them and try and convey that in a paragraph alongside your photos. Now in my case, I also created an app for the book afterwards, simply because I wanted to learn how to do that, and it was nice to have a digital way also to collect all those things that is not Instagram or somebody else's platform, but your own, essentially. So that's the last thing I wanted to share in this talk today. I'm glad you're still awake. Thanks for listening. Yeah. Thanks, Shaji. All right.
No questions?
Yeah, you have any questions? Sure.
All the killer whales creatures.
No, there's never been a documented case of a killer whale attacking a human in the wild.
But they do attack sharks and everything.
Yeah, they go after everything: seals, sharks, whales, humpbacks, but never humans. Yeah. And killer whales are incredibly interesting animals. I always like them a little bit. I like sea life, and I used to have a huge reef tank in my house and so on. So I always like killer whales. But once you've been in the water with them, you completely different appreciation. Same with the elephant, actually. So you see elephants in the zoo or like in captivity and so on, and even from a safari vehicle when you're like high surrounded by this big chunk of steel. But when you're on the ground, like just sitting there and the thing walks by, it's like you have a different appreciation for the animal. Yeah.
I had this experience in Sri Lanka with a smaller elephant than that, and I mean, it didn't do anything, like you say. It's like, I was scared, honestly, a bit. When it passed next to us, I got like a little bit out of the car, not probably even to the ground, just like, you know, kind of hanging.
Yeah.
And then it was passing here, and I'm like, oh my god, it's so big.
Yeah, you don't feel as protected anymore.
Yeah.
This is something I can say in general. If you ever go to Africa on safari, so if you go to the big national parks run by the countries themselves, you can't usually do that. But if you go to the private concessions, they have walking safaris quite often. So you can go and get out of the car and walk. And usually they do it in a way that it's not dangerous. You don't go if there's elephants next to you or if there's lions around and so on. But just the feeling of being out in the bush without sitting in a car that is noisy and, you know, you sit high at like eye level with an elephant is very different than walking. Yeah, even if you don't really see animals close to you while you're walking.
The cameras all
Now, Olympus? Yeah, except the drone photos. Obviously, at that time I was using the DJI Air 2S for most of them, except I think for one I had the Air 3, which is a really nice compromise between size and getting a second focal length, 70 millimeters, which got me back into drone photography. I got bored of drone photography because just always the same focal length, so everything looks kind of the same. But now that I have a drone with two focal lengths, I loved it. So a lot of Mongolia shots, for example, like compressed into the dunes and things like that, I took with the drone, and I really enjoyed it compared to the old one. And all the other photos are with my Olympus. Yeah, most of them with the OM1. And I have the previous generation as a secondary camera, Yeah, another lesson maybe, mirrorless. Yeah, if you have a small system, not full frame, you can do a lot, take a lot of different lenses with you, take 2 or 3 bodies with you, 5, 6, 7 lenses in one backpack and a tripod or 2 tripods and still carry it. Yeah, possible. Yeah, I think I have.
How do you manage your battery life? Like when you have no access to
Battery packs. Yeah, I have 2 20,000 milliampere battery packs, and those ones are like typically like 2 or 3 charges basically for the cameras. Yeah, and my laptop. Yeah, there's another thing I always do. So I use my laptop as like a battery hub essentially, and charge like 2 or 3 cameras from the USB-C port while the laptop is plugged in, if you can. So you can charge more things at the same time. I almost never take my battery out of the camera. Always have like inside, charge them inside, and have 1 or 2 extra. Yeah. Having a small system helps. I can, in my backpack, PGY Tech pack, not the biggest one, I can put 3 bodies, 7 lenses, all the way from 8mm fisheye to 300 f4, which is 600 f4 on the crop factor, plus the converter easily in my backpack with 2 tripods and carry it, and it's not horrible. It's doable.
How would you how far can you go?
I don't know, I went up some of the volcanoes with that backpack with 2 or 3 bodies and two tripods, so.
No, I mean, I guess.
The ISO level,
It depends on what you're looking for. Like, ISO performance of the OM1 is maybe, I don't know, 1 or 2 stops worse than a Z9 or something, than a high-end full frame. So, on the other hand, you have the benefit that because of the crop factor, you don't have to stop down. If I shoot at 2.8, I have enough depth of field because it's almost 5.6 equivalent, right? Not quite. But So I never stop down to get more depth of field. It's very rare that I have to do that. So that means I save on ISO, right, or shutter. So if you shoot a lot of portraits and you want a lot of depth, a little depth of field, you want sort of a lot of bokeh behind you, yeah, okay, it's maybe different. But if for landscape and even wildlife sometimes, you don't want that. You want to stop down. I don't. I shoot at 600 f4 and I don't care about stopping down because I have enough depth of field for, I don't know, a lion or something. So it's trade-offs and depending on your application. But I'm still not tempted to go to full frame. Even if it was free, if I had the money, if I just had a choice and they cost the same, I'm still not tempted to go to full frame. Maybe at some point. Yeah. And there's cool features. Like this camera is only 20 megapixels, but it has a 50 and 80 megapixel high res mode. So for landscape stuff, I can get 80 megapixel shots that are really, really good. It has cool things like a built-in ND filter. Yeah, you can just go to ND64 without needing an actual filter. It just does it in camera. Really crazy stabilization, 5-6 stops easily. So you can, on a like 24 millimeter, I can handheld like 1 second if I want to. It's possible. So there's some really cool features that you can't really find. It has wildlife, the leopard, for example, the snow leopard. The Z9, I think, has it now, and I don't know how they did it because Olympus patented it. Maybe they paid them, I'm not sure. But it has a feature where if I press the shutter halfway, it starts buffering.
Pre-capture.
Yeah, pre-capture. It does 30 up to 60 frames per second pre-capture. Then when I press, it saves those to memory. So I get the second before I press the shutter. I use this for lightning, for example. So there was a time when I couldn't really set up a lot. There was some lightning in Mongolia. Maybe you saw the shot with the lightning on the yurt. I didn't have time to set up stuff. It was like raining already. I just put the camera on the tripod quickly, just used that mode, held it halfway, waited for the lightning. When I saw the lightning, I pressed, and it captured the shot 1 second before. So I got the lightning.
I know Sony has this now on the A9.
Maybe, yeah. The Z9 was the first one to have it outside the Olympus cameras.
But I didn't understand it, you know.
The Sony one works a bit differently. I don't know what it does, but I had this for the last 8 years, I think. That's how I got a lot of nice bird shots, for example. Birds are one of the prime things when they fly. I get the shot before 1 second before they actually fly off. Wildlife similar. Yeah.
Actually, Nikon started their in Nikon 1 system. They had a previous 1-inch sensors. System,
on the on the analog.
That time they started this.
Interesting.
And that was a failure.
For the mirrorless one, I know Olympus patented it, and now there's the Z9 that has it, and maybe they're bringing it to Z8. I'm not sure.
Maybe now it's everywhere.
Maybe it's now it's everywhere. Maybe the patent expired. Yeah, or maybe they sold it. I'm not sure. Yeah, but there's a lot of features like this. Why if I trade off all the factors, I wouldn't switch to full frames. So yeah, I wouldn't do it.
I think you are the only one person.
There's one guy there's a guy in Ras Al Khaimah who has Olympus. I talk to him sometimes on Instagram. I never met him, yeah. But in here, there's none. I spoke to them before because they don't do anything in the Middle East. No ambassadors, you can't even buy them here easily. They just don't focus on it. Too small. They don't care.
I have a friend back home. I mean, he's on Fuji, but it's still smaller than full frame, and he's like one of the top commercial photographers in Croatia. And he doesn't want to switch. He's just always like, why? Like,
if you look at
my gear is lighter, cheaper, you know, but still giving great quality.
If you look at wildlife photography competitions, there's a lot of Olympus shooters. Yeah. Why? Because the 600 is like my 300 f4, which is 600 f4 equivalent. Yeah, is this size. It weighs 1.2 kilos, I think.
Yeah, those are like 3 kilos.
And it costs 8,000 dirhams, not 80,000 dirhams. So.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jordan.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for coming, guys.
Yeah, thanks for coming and amazing. We are so lucky. We are really so lucky to to go across the entire planet without paying any single fees. So okay, keep going, Floor. Okay. Can we take a picture, a group picture?
Oh my God,
please.
sure.